So this is going to be a panel session. I'm really excited about this one. This is all about diagnosing COVID-19 by voice. So we've got Shmuel Dr. who's an inventor, and I'll get him to introduce himself in a moment, but he's working with Voca.ai on some vocal biomarkers for COVID. And Tal Wenderow, who's the CEO of Vocalis Health, who have a long time history of working on vocal biomarkers. And so maybe we can start off with just a very brief introduction, who you are and what you're doing.
Sure.
Tal, do you want to start?
First, thanks for having us. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a virtual world today, which is always fascinating. As you mentioned, Vocalis is an Israeli startup. I'm actually based in Newton, Mass, running the company from Boston. What we're doing is as simple as you mentioned before, using voice to monitor health in different stages of solution, different stages of platform. The most up-to-date and hopefully in the market soon is our ability to detect shortness of breath by using your voice. I'll stop here for a second, and then probably we'll get into more discussion later on.
Wonderful, thank you. And Shmuel?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So I'm actually not from the voice market. I'm an inventor. I used to be an IBM master inventor. I have a few hundreds inventions, and I generally invent for the high-tech companies in Israel, startups, and a bit bigger ones. And I invent in all sorts of fields in computer science, which is my expertise.
Wonderful. Okay, so this is really interesting, and I've said this a number of times, that the whole idea of vocal biomarkers fascinates me. The idea that you can diagnose something potentially by voice, because I actually think this is going to become like a vital sign. Like doctors take blood pressure, you can listen to the voice. So can we start off with maybe one of you, Tal, you've been doing this for a long time. Like, what is the idea behind a vocal biomarker? What exactly is that? Can you describe that to the audience?
1 year. Before that, there was a different disruptive technology doing robotics for cath procedures. So telehealth, we're using robotics. So now we're going a little bit simpler. But vocal biomarker, right. What we're trying to do is we analyze your voice. We don't listen to what you say, but the way you say that. So attenuation, pitch, jitter, and so forth. We don't care whether you speak about pandemic, COVID, baseball, weather, or whatever fight you had in the family. So we're not listening to that. And by that, we correlate it with medical condition and disease with the goal to predict, monitor, and triage disease and conditions.
And so maybe we can turn to you, Shmuel. So what's the idea then behind what you are doing in partnership with Voca about COVID, and how does that play into the whole vocal biomarker concept?
So a month ago, before when we could still travel, professors at Rita Sinch from Carnegie Mellon was giving a talk here in Israel, and she was talking about voice forensic, and and they can do all sorts of amazing things, like even actually decide on the picture of your skull, and if you drank tea and all sorts of things, and of course, like Tal said, figure out all sorts of health issues. So when the corona started, I asked her what's going on. I mean, are you going to do a corona? How to do some things that can identify corona? And she said, well, that takes time. It takes years. And I said, why? He said, well, you need Helsinki, and you need to collect voice samples and all that. So 2 weeks ago, I decided that we're going to start collect voice samples and make them available to every researcher that wants them. And I posted a note in Facebook asking if somebody is willing to help me. And somebody extremely connected in the high-tech industry in Israel called Eden Shochat decided it's a good idea. So I wasn't there for 2 hours, and suddenly there are 80 people who are willing to help me. And in the end of the day, Voca.ai, which is, people talked about it. What they do is they do assistance, virtual assistance for banks, and banks have lots of, they need lots of calls now, so they can do the assistance and maybe take care of 80% of the calls. But they said they'll do pro bono, the website for me. It's not their business, but they'll do it just to help. So I went to them, and they created the website, and we started collecting voice samples. I put the website on the comments, and by now, and we said the idea was that we'll collect voice samples, and anybody that wants to use them, because we are not in competition with anybody, we're not in the healthcare business, we're just collecting the samples. Anybody that wants to use them will get to use them, and by now 6 different research groups have already asked for it, and of course get it. And hopefully one of those research groups, or Voca.ai, or whomever gets there first, we just want to be able to identify corona from voice as fast as possible.
Tal, so I know that, Voca.ai, I mean, this isn't the first time that you're looking at vocal biomarkers for disease. So I'm a little curious now. You need the samples. You need the data to be able to make some conclusions. So how many samples do you need? How long does this process take? Because then I wonder, by the time this is done, by the time you have enough samples, will the pandemic have passed? What are your thoughts on that?
Before I answer that, I'll just kudos to Shmuel, not from this field, and launching that. That's great. Meaning that's the first time actually Shmuel and I are meeting. We're meeting tomorrow face to face on Zoom, dedicated for that, to see how we can collaborate. So that's a different story. So thanks, Teri, for bringing us together, right? And we'll show what we're doing shortly on that. But it's a good question, right? It's a good question of how many samples, how long it takes, and also the question of what you're trying to do, right? So the way we actually approach that is two-arm study, right? So we are doing vocal biomarker for a long time. I'll say, luckily and ironically for us, we're focusing on respiratory disease to begin with. Infrastructure in our machine learning algorithm, how to create a baseline to a person and then follow that person throughout time, both on the COPD and shortness of breath. And that's based on the prospective data that we already collected. We did a study with Geisinger Health, 100 patients, 6 months, voice sampling on a daily basis, together with Piccolo and other viral measurements, right? When you deal with that, and you mentioned that, the way we see voice is like the sense of your body, right? We all intuitively use that. We all say, you don't sound so good today, and what happened, and so forth. As a healthcare, and I've been in healthcare for the last 20 years, in the healthcare business, we just never use that as a standardized tool, right? We just never quantify that. We know how to look into blood pressure, your color of your skin, or your blood count, your pupil, and so forth, but not on voice. Physicians know how to do that, but still, there's not a standardized way of how to do that. The company actually started by a physician, MD, wrote code when he was young, that realized, I can diagnose patient based on that. Let's standardize that, and let's open a company about it. So the way I think about it is voice is just, I'll say that again, it's the first line of defense, right? It's kind of like all spoke about, accessible, easy to get, cost effective. As long as you maintain the privacy is a big thing here, right? Trust and privacy, you have to do the right thing. Then you can provide insight to the medical team, you provide diagnostic to the medical team. Well, I'll say that, I don't think you'll get a voice sample, whether it's COVID-19, whether it's atrial fibrillation, CHF, whatever the disease is, it goes straight to the OR. No, that's not the way we're thinking about it, right? It's you mentioned that, you mentioned voice in computer, right? You start with the voice, that's the first layer, that's the first triage, and then you add the regular clinical pathway. More specifically for that, when we think about the study, we're doing that in 2 arms. One is it's similar to what Shmuel is doing, about going to the crowd, getting samples, and people, whether patients or people, self-reported. The challenge with that is you need a lot of data, because this is like exit polls after the election, right? You don't know if the data is real. So you just need a lot of data there. So we're doing that in 1 arm. We have a similar study. Happy to share the link as well. And on the other arm, we just announced yesterday a collaboration we're doing with the Israeli Ministry of Defense, the DARPA of Israel. So we're doing that together with university in Israel, with 2 leading hospitals in Israel, and going through the patients that are labeled and running a full clinical trial under IRB, collecting patients that are hospitalized on a daily basis, right? Now, to your point, how can we help? Can we find a solution to COVID-19? Will not be a therapeutic, right? We don't have vaccine. And can we find a solution, tell you, hey, Teri, you have a disease, yes or no? Probably not, because of the asymptomatic presentation of the disease and how it converts to symptomatic really fast. But can we help manage the disease? And can we help triage who should get tested? The answer is yes. And that's what we're trying to do. To find something that can help you triage who should get tested, because there's the problem of testing availability, number one. And then once you get tested and you're COVID-19 positive, to manage the disease at home. Because I don't know if you or Brett told that, it's all about flattening the curve. It's all about how the asymptomatic and symptomatic, light, mild, should stay home. And the healthcare system don't want them in the hospital. So how do you monitor that home while they're living their life and have a vocal biomarker that is unique to COVID? That's what we're trying to do. That's the goal here of all of us. And we all want to solve that and figure out with the business side later on, right? Meaning that's kind of the way we think about it.
Interesting. Now, I just want to open this up as well to everybody on here. If you have a question, just feel free to type it in the chat, and then we can bring those up as well. And there's a great question there, actually. Let's throw that one out right now. I think that's a wonderful question. So maybe Shmuel, you can answer that. Are you recording voice samples in different languages, and is language a barrier to this research?
So from what everybody tells me, and again, I'm not an expert, from what everybody tells me, the language doesn't make a big difference to them. The website that we have is written in English just because English is actually well understood by everybody, but it doesn't matter. Another effort that we are actually starting to do, which I think is sort of interesting, started yesterday, is to collect lots of people that have the corona are recording things on YouTube. So we're looking for lots of clips on YouTube in which people say, in which people say something, and then we have the voice. The reason it's actually of less use to the people in the medical profession is because in our website, the ones that you can see on the notes, we also ask for things like age and country and all those things, which are very useful for and weight and things like that, which are very useful for the algorithms. I don't think that the language actually makes much of a difference, but then I'm just repeating what the experts tell me.
Okay, this is a good question too. I mean, when we're talking about these research studies, can either of you comment on, these sorts of aspects of the protocols? The protocol is double blind. Like, how do you control for these types of things? Do either one of you want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, I can try.
I'll just yes.
Okay, why don't you go ahead, Tal, and then we can have Shmuel chime in as well.
I did my share of clinical trial, and it's a painful process, but one that should be followed because of, you want to make sure it's GCP, which is good clinical practice, right? There are standards about how to run a clinical trial today, worldwide, and to maintain the patient privacy. So obviously there's a protocol. We're doing a protocol under IRB, both on the web collection with a web server that also posted our link, and also in the hospital. They follow the IRB, insurance if needed, all the regular HIPAA compliance. You have to do that when you run a study. That's number one. Number two, the protocol has an endpoint, right? Like a regular protocol, there's inclusion criteria, there's an endpoint that you're trying to meet your performance goal to get to that result, and we follow that. And the last thing, is it blinded? The answer is no right now. It's hard to blind someone that at this stage that the first step is to try to see, is the signal strong enough? That's what we're trying to see in the next 4 weeks, right? Now, later on, because it's not therapeutic, you don't need to double blind it. You usually do double blind with a placebo effect, with a drug, to see how it impacts the therapy of the patient, not the diagnostic of the patient. We're doing diagnostic, right? You can think about double blind if you want to think people are trying to mock up and just trying to say nonsense to trick the algorithm. But as Shmuel mentioned, it's language agnostic, right? We have data in our database in, I'll say, English, Hebrew, German, Russian, Arabic. We have I think we have some Spanish as well. We have a lot of those. And as long as you create a baseline to a patient, that's what we're trying to do. Then you kind of make the language even more agnostic because you compare to yourself all the time. Then the language is more agnostic.
Anything to add to that, Shmuel?
Yeah. So first, I'm a researcher. So I do have quite a lot of papers. But this is not research that I'm doing here. I'm just collecting data and sharing it with anybody that wants it. I also have an answer to Helen, who asked if this can help unified response. So what we can't likely do is say if somebody has corona, because many people are not symptomatic, and so it might not impact their voice. But if we do say that he has corona, my guess is that we can say it with high certainty. So this will be very useful. And the other thing, and the reason we need to collect lots of samples, is it's quite likely, I don't know yet, we'll know probably in 2-3 weeks, I hope, that you can actually detect it a little bit before the temperature rises, because it impacts the voice maybe before. And this would make a huge difference, because in many places, for example, in China now, in other places they are not up to it, they go back out, but before you go into any place, they measure your temperature. So if before you go in, they can actually take your voice and find it a little bit before the temperature, it will reduce the RO of the corona, which is the rate in which it spreads, by a lot. So any good testing, if we had good testing, voice is going one way, but good testing will actually go a long way into stopping the epidemic.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Well, it's the key point, right? To your point, whoever find that solution to add AI to that, and that's what we're all trying to do, not just to say what it is today, but also predict, right? That predictive analytic is a key component of how you manage disease the right way. And again, the voice is not just the only solution for that. There are other solutions. There's a lot of symptoms check. There's a lot of people trying to do. We just believe the compliance of the invoice, right? And the ease of use is the most easiest, like all of us, hopefully, on this webinar right now.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Boy, we could talk about this forever. We're a little bit short on time. What I'd love to do is just give you each an opportunity then to just say how people can get involved or find more information, and how they can just learn more about this. So Tal, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. I think that's probably Shmuel will echo me. Just go to one of our websites. Doesn't matter which one right now. Fill the questionnaire, add your voice. I think that's the number one. Meaning Shmuel and I will find ways to show the data. So it doesn't matter which platform, show the data. That's number one. And try to be prescriptive with your questions and answers on that. Second is any feedback will be great. Meaning if you know someone and you can reach out to someone who has a COVID-19 positive test or negative test, that's valuable information for us, because that's how we train the algorithm, right? The more we know, the better we can train. So to me, it's more about, guys, we're trying to share what we're doing in Israel, we're doing it with the army, so it's going to be shared with a lot of people. And what Shmuel is doing with the one goal, how do we manage the disease better to wait for that vaccine? We're trying to wait for the vaccine. So how do we wait for that vaccine? So that's from our side.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Tal. And Shmuel?
So I just wanted to say that I agree with Tal. In addition, some people here have connections not only to friends, but also to communities and to newspapers. And the more you spread the fact that we have those tests and the people can go and donate, it's actually very easy for people to do. And most people have the time now, at least in Israel, you are at home. So most people have the time and they can give the voice samples. So if you can do it either individually or spread the news in either through Facebook or whatever, or some people that would like to write about it, it will be really useful.
Wonderful. Well, thank you both for taking some time here. This is a really fascinating topic. As I've said a number of times, I see a lot of potential for using voice as a sign for what's going on with our health. So thank you all the way from Israel to both of you for your time. And I encourage everybody here to check out what these guys are doing and consider, donating your voice sample to the database, because that's what we need right now. So thank you very much, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.